All right, we're going to start with the user interface. So for SolidWorks, the main menu is your file menu. Base menu, you have the old school file drop downs, or you can use the icons. Either one, it's the exact same menu. We can go ahead and hit File New. This is pretty much the start of every drawing you're going to do. You can go File New, and then it's going to ask you 3 questions. Do you want to create a part? Do you want to create an assembly? Or do you want to create a drawing? You're going to answer one of those. Okay, so do you want to create one single item? Do you want to create an assembly of multiple items? Or do you want to do a layout or a shop drawing? Okay, so most of the time when we are in the creation mode, we're going to be doing a part. So I'm just going to hit part and hit OK. It's going to fire this thing up, and this is going to bring us to our interface. We have a couple main menus that you're going to hear me reference over and over and again as we're going through this process of learning how to use SolidWorks. The first is the file menu. Okay, if I ever say file menu or top menu, this is what I mean. So this is this menu up here. We have file, we have our view menu, we have insert, which has all of our commands on it. We have tools. The tools can bring us into sketch tools. It can bring us into feature tools. It can bring us into evaluate, which we'll use quite a bit. We have our simulation menu. We're not really going to touch on this at all in this particular class. When we dive into advanced SolidWorks, we'll touch on the simulation menu. But that's pretty much it for the top menu. Okay, so it's File New and File Save As are the 2 main buttons you're ever going to use in this. From time to time, we'll make drawing or make assembly from part. But for the most part, you're not going to use this too often. Okay, most of the time you're going to use your other menus down here. So the next menu that we have is our ribbon. It comes across here. The ribbon is activated by these tabs. So if you ever hear me say this tab or this tab, meaning you go to these buttons here that take you to the different tabs, which show you the different options on your ribbon. We use 3 main ones in this course, specifically 3. We use the Sketch tab to create 2D. We use the Feature tab to create 3D. And then we use the Evaluate tab to make sure our product is what we want it to be. Okay, and I'll elaborate more on that whenever we get into our first part. But Sketch, Feature, and Evaluate. There are some other options in here. Right now for you guys, that is not necessary for learning SolidWorks. I don't really want you to deep dive into that unless you have a firm grasp of everything else that's going on. Okay, so we have our top menu or our file menu, our ribbon, and our tabs. We have also what we call our design tree. Our design tree is literally just a history of everything that we've done in creating a part. Okay, so I have a front plane, a top plane, a right plane, so I can see my different drawing windows. I can see the material that I'm working with. I can also break it down into annotations that I have, and I can also see my origin. Remember, when we're drawing like this, we're really drawing in 3 dimensions all the time, and so our origin acts as our 0, 0 point on any specific plane. So whenever I go to front plane, and I sketch, my origin shows up as my XY axis. So this is 0, 0. You can actually see if you come down here, you can see where I'm actually at on this grid. So that's all you're thinking about this workspace as. It's just a great big grid. Okay, so if I'm all the way up here, I'm positive X and positive Y. If I move down below the origin, you can see that origin runs here. As soon as I move down below that origin, I'm at negative Y. If I move left of the x-axis, I'm at negative x, negative y, negative x, positive y. Okay, so we got 4 main quadrants that we're going to work with. That's the same in any menu that I'm going to be in. So if I go into top plane, same thing. I have my origin. It's just going to rotate around to the top of an object. How's that look if I actually have a product on there? So let me draw something up here real quick. I'm just going to draw something very simple. So I have and let's go ahead and put a hole in it too. So I have a little block with a hole in it. That's all I've done. And again, when I was talking about the design tree, you can see the history of everything I've done. You can actually back that history up. So I can actually back this up to where I've done nothing. Or I can move it forward to where I've created my block. And then second thing you saw me do was cut a hole. So I move that forward. You can see the history. Now, the first thing it's always going to show you is the three-dimensional object. But if I want to, I can open this up and I can actually see the sketch or the line elements that it is actually drawn with. So I can go back and I can modify those. So if I wanted to change that dimension from 106 to 150, I can do that and manipulate that object a little bit. Okay, so it allows you to go back and re-edit once it's already been created, which is kind of a cool feature. Okay. The other thing we can see in our workspace is as I'm looking at all this, I can also change the material. So say I wanted a piece made out of pure gold. I can go to other metals. I can find pure gold. I can apply that material. And now this is made out of pure gold. You're like, all right, well, what does that actually mean? That doesn't mean anything to me. You just put a color on it. Well, it does mean something because it actually changes the makeup or the mass of the part. You can see right here, I have my units are set to millimeters, grams, and seconds. So you saw me change a dimension in millimeters. But in order to weigh it, it's going to weigh it in grams right now. Okay, if I had it on IPS, I'd be drawing in inches. The dimension I put on would have been in inches, and it would weigh it in pounds. Okay, but right now I started this drawing in MMGS, which is millimeters, grams, seconds. So if I go to evaluate, hit mass properties, right now this thing weighs, this piece that I just drew, weighs 2,500 grams, 2508.8. Okay, well, say I change the material. Does it actually change anything? Say I change it to, let's do just plain carbon steel. Okay, if I change it to that, now what's the mass? Oh, it changed quite a bit. It weighs a lot less than what pure gold just weighed. Okay, so it actually is based on the density of the object, and every single material in here has a specific characteristic that actually is applied to the object. And you can see it breaks down every material into several different values and units. That way, whenever you're testing the material, you can get an accurate reading of what's actually being applied to the object. Okay. The other thing that we want to talk about real quick before we move on to the next video is your views. Okay. Right now, I'd be in what's called an isometric view. Okay, which means I can see three dimensions of the object. I can see the front plane, I can see the top plane, I can see the right side of the object. I can see three different elements of it, so I can see the isometric view. In my viewports up here, you can see view orientation. There's my isometric. That just zooms out the exact same thing I was just showing you. I can also just go straight to the front view, or I can go to the right side view. The other cool thing I could do, you saw that there's a hole in this. Well, where'd the hole go? Well, I can actually see through an object if I want to change the display setting. Instead of a solid object, I can change it to hidden lines visible. Now I can see those two lines where that hole is going through this object. Right? I can see that very well. I can change that at any point. We can create all kinds of things in here. We can create section views. I like zoom to fit a lot. There's a lot of times when you're zooming with your mouse, you'll accidentally do this. Where'd my drawing go? I know I've been drawing this thing. I can see things on here, where to go. Zoom to fit. Okay, the other thing that zoom to fit helps with is just the F key on your keyboard. It does the exact same thing. And you can see they always give you this shortcut. See that right? Oh. See it says F. That means zoom to fit. Zoom to area. Okay, if I want to zoom into a specific spot. You'll end up using your mouse quite a bit to scroll. If you hold down on the center ball of your mouse, you can actually rotate as well. That's another option for you as you're figuring out how to actually pan around on this thing. But I always end up in that isometric view quite a bit. The one other thing that view that I'm going to explain real quick that a lot of people have trouble grasping is what's called normal to. Okay, so if I want to see the top of this, and say it's an irregular shape. Actually, let me go ahead and do this. That way I can be more accurate in what I'm saying here. So I'm going to cut off this little bit. So I have my polygon there. I'm going to cut this off. So that surface right there, well, that isn't necessarily the top. Like if I go to the top view, that's flat. That's not. That's actually still at an angle. Okay, well if I go to my right side view, well that's flat, but that's actually still at an angle. Well, how do I draw flat on there? Because if I go to the top view, and I try to draw a circle, and then I try to cut out a hole in that circle, let's just go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. Well, it cut straight down through, but it cut from the top. Well, what if I wanted to cut from that surface? How do I do that? Well, you actually select what's called normal to. Okay, so what it does is it takes any surface that you've selected and rotates that flat towards you. Now you can see that that's oblong because it's now flat towards you because it was cut on an angle originally. Well, now I can sketch on that surface. Now if I draw this same hole, there we go. Go to cut that out. You can see it's cutting out flat to that surface or perpendicular to that surface. So it's a much different cutout than the previous one we just did. Right? Makes sense? Hope it does. You're going to play with this quite a bit as you're going through this process of learning SolidWorks. You can always refer back to this video, watch it as many times as you need. Next, we're going to move on to file types.